Welcome to the new year. Well, 4 months into the new year. It's been not really a while because this is kind of the average time I take between updates. But this one is considerably smaller than the rest. I've only got like 11 Blu-rays, give or take. Pretty much for two main reasons. One is I'm trying to cut back on the amount I'm buying. Because, you only have so much space, and obviously I feel like this particular decade alone, I felt like I've bought like too much. And also, ever since January, something else has taken my fancy. Yes, if you saw my community post, you will know I bought my first turntable, and I've been collecting vinyl records. So yeah, I won't show the records I bought in this video because I bought quite a few. So I've decided the next video is going to be a record collection video, so look out for that. But anyway, we've got a couple of tickets as well and one VHS tape. We'll start off with the tickets. This is a theatre ticket for Uncanny Fear the Dark, hosted by Danny Robbins. Uncanny it was originally a podcast on the BBC. And then it was turned into a TV show and then into a theatre production. I've never seen the TV show and I've never listened to the podcast. I'm not really that into like paranormal stuff because as a massive skeptic, I know it's a load of bullshit. There's always either an explanation behind it or there's just no proof to any of it. So obviously that puts me at a disconnect. But the stage show was really good fun. It was sort of like where they tell different like ghost stories, like a UFO sighting or like a Bigfoot sighting or whatever, and they'd have like a believer and a skeptic on, and they sort of debate as to whether or not it was really paranormal activity or whether or not there was some other reason behind it. It was really, really good. It was really good fun evening. The one part that kind of let it down was they would ask people in the audience, if they could tell any ghost stories and their experiences with the paranormal, and it's obvious they were making them up on the spot. One of them had to be reminded how his fucking story ended. I'm not joking. Yeah, I mean, bless the people on stage. They have to be tactful. They have to pretend like, oh yes, there's probably a reason behind it, or oh yes, you've experienced poltergeist. When really, no, the people in the audience were just talking out of their arses. That's the ultimate way to debunk it. But yeah, other than that, it was really good fun. Then we have a cinema ticket. I don't actually have a physical ticket for this item, but I do have the film on DVD as it was a cinema re-release. But yeah, this is Labyrinth, classic Jim Henson film starring David Bowie. Really, really good film, really good fun. I've seen it quite a few times. And there's just something to be said about seeing David Bowie in tights, showing practically everything on the big screen. Yeah, great film and great to see it on the big screen. For some reason, they recently upped the rating this to a PG. It was a U. It was a U when it came out originally in the 80s, and it was a U for a very long time. They're upping everything, aren't they? It's weird with the BBC. They're either downgrading 18 films to 15 or upping U films to PG. There's no like middle ground. Like you don't get that many U films and you don't get that many 18 films anymore, which is a real shame. But yeah, that was Labyrinth. So now we have the Soul VHS. This is Glam Metal Detectives from the hit BBC TV series. And this was a sort of sketch show, sort of sitcom done by Peter Richardson from the comic strip. From what I understand, I've not actually watched this yet. It's sort of like flipping through TV channels, and they'd have scheduled programs and so on. I've heard it's really good, but I've not actually watched it. Yeah, only lasted for a single series due to some internal politics of the BBC, and they only made 7 episodes, and they only, and this tape contains the first 3 episodes. They've never, and this was the only video release the series ever had. It's not had, there wasn't a volume 2 or a DVD or anything like that. So the last 4 episodes, basically the only way you can actually see them is off-air recordings. But yeah, this is a BBC release from 1995, very early 1995, because it says BBC Enterprises. This is just before they changed the name to BBC Worldwide. Here's the inside with all the BBC titles, bestsellers apparently. Here's the tape. The print date is, don't know if you can see that on camera, it's the 15th of February 1995. But bought this on eBay. It's not a particularly valuable tape. I think I got this for less than a tenner. But it doesn't pop up that often, and the seller had kind of fibbed about its condition, because he said in the description, like, oh, it's been played all the way through, it plays perfectly. Fucking bollocks. It was halfway through on the picture, which obviously indicates they've lied, but also when I got it, it had bloody mould on it. Well, not, it wasn't that much mould in that. I don't know if it was mould or just like dirt on the tape, because when I cleaned it, I only gave it 1 pass through and it didn't leave any stains whatsoever. Normally mould, when you clean it off the first time, you have to like properly scrub it off the top edges to get the stains out. This one didn't have any stains. It was nice and uniform colour as it should be. Unfortunately, because it was halfway through, there was a small bit of tape damage in the middle. But I have digitised this. I've not watched it, but I have digitised it. And the damage doesn't seem that bad. There's a couple of like lines that go down the screen at that point for a few seconds, and that's it. It sort of clears on its own. So it's in fairly good condition, and other than that bit, the rest of it seems fine. So obviously I didn't open a complaint or anything like that, but still, don't fucking lie. Tell me the truth. This hasn't been played since 1995. But anyway, that was Glam Metal Detectives. So now I move on to the Blu-rays. First one is kind of a steelbook, The French Connection. I already have a copy of The French Connection. I recently rewatched this just around the Christmas period. A phenomenal film. I really liked it then, but I didn't love it when I first saw it. But now I've watched it again, I've fallen in love with it. It's a phenomenal film. But the one thing that kind of distracted me about it was I was watching the copy in here, which has the that god-awful remaster done by William Friedkin, which when I watched it this time, it was really fucking distracting, like just how bad it looks. I kind of get where there is a documentary on the Blu-ray, and it's also on YouTube, about his logic behind it and how he achieved it, and I sort of get the idea, but it was kind of obvious he didn't actually pay proper attention, to the way it looked before he committed it, because it looks smeary as bloody hell. Like the colours like constantly bleed. It's just, there's constant colour bleeding, especially on reds, like near the start of the film when Gene Hackman, is in the Santa suit. The reds do not stay in their lines at all. And also the skin tones, they're supposed to be sort of pastely, but they just look really, really pink. Like, I get Popeye's supposed to be a gammon, but that doesn't mean he has to have really, really flush pink skin. It was absolutely atrocious. It didn't really distract me that much the first time I saw it, but my laptop back then wasn't that great. It didn't have a great screen or anything. This laptop I've got at the moment has like a proper OLED screen and so on, and properly calibrated, so you can see everything. You can see just how shite it looks. So a few years later, they actually did do a proper remaster where they just scanned the negatives, cleaned them up, did some more bit of colour correction and so on. The original Transform Blu-ray was highly controversial because it looks shite, and apparently the cinematographer who won an Oscar for it is an Oscar-winning film. Saw what Friedkin had done and basically asked him, "What the fuck were you thinking?" So a few years later, they did do a proper remaster of it. So there's 2 direct-to-approved remasters of The French Connection. Yeah, this one, the difference quality-wise is night and day. For whatever reason, the remastered Blu-ray is very, very elusive. It's out of print in America and goes for quite a bit on the second-hand market. The original Blu-ray is still in print. You can get that very, very cheap. You can still get this for an affordable price. But you can't get the remastered Blu-ray for that cheap, which is just ridiculous and oddly very backwards. Like, the original transfer should be the elusive one, not the new transfer. So yeah, I paid about 20 quid for this from CEX. The steelbook's not in too bad a condition, actually. I was expecting it, to be bashed and scratched and so on, because people who donate to CEX can't look after their stuff. But it doesn't have the J card with it or anything, and it's got an 18 sticker on the side. But since it doesn't have the J card, and in order to save space on the shelf, this is the disc that came out of that French Connection set. And I'm actually keeping the disc that came out of the steelbook in here, because I know for a fact if I'm ever going to watch the film again, this is the version I'm going to put on. The difference quality-wise is night and day. And the extras, I think, are the same between the 2 sets, except I think there's like 2 featurettes that were not included on the remastered Blu-ray, but they're on the bonus disc, so I really don't need the first disc of this one. So the steelbook is going to go into storage, and this is going to be the one I'm going to display and so on. But yeah, great film, and I can't wait to watch it again with the correct colour timing. Right, so the next Blu-ray is really, really fun film, this. Bubba Hotep, starring Bruce Campbell. I send my greatest condolences to Bruce Campbell if he's watching this video, which I highly doubt he is. Directed by Don Cascarelli, who also directed Phantasm. Has a very similar feel to Phantasm in the sense that the script is a bit of a mess. It's essentially a movie about this Elvis impersonator who fights a mummy. Very, very bizarre film, as you might expect from that synopsis. It does definitely feel a bit disjointed in places, script-wise, and I mean, it takes a very long time for the mummy to show up, but this film makes up for it by the writing and especially the humour. This film's absolutely hilarious. Really, really fun film, and Bruce Campbell is fantastic. But yeah, very, very fun film. I didn't realise this had a Blu-ray release in the UK. I thought this was DVD only until I had a look on like Blu-ray.com and discovered, oh, it does have a Blu-ray here. Actually, it's a very decent selection of extras. It's kind of a shame this one's out of print and it's not been reissued since. This is released by Anchor Bay. This is my only Anchor Bay Blu-ray. So now here's the disc. So I would just have some reversible artwork. Next one is John Carpenter film, one of the few John Carpenter films I hadn't seen up to this point. Starman. Very, very different film for John Carpenter, because John Carpenter, as we all know, is kind of the master of horror. He mostly directed like horrors and action films. This is not that at all. This is actually a sci-fi romance. And it doesn't seem like the kind of thing I'd get into, but I really, really dug this film. It's a great, great film. A lot of people consider this sort of lesser tier Carpenter. Maybe I do as well, but I've not seen a single John Carpenter film I've properly disliked. I like them all to a degree. But yeah, really, really good film, this. Here's the disc. Next up we have Saturday Night Fever, the film that made John Travolta a star. A film a lot of people know sort of through cultural osmosis and sort of through the imagery. The image of John Travolta in the white suit on the dance floor. The film that sort of briefly revived disco before it died again. It's a film most people have heard of, but I get the feeling they haven't actually seen it. A lot of people seem to think this is like a disco version of Grease, and I say this from a perspective of somebody who's never seen Grease. This is nothing like Grease. This is actually a very, very, very grim film, a very nihilistic film, made sort of near the end of the New Hollywood era. I think a lot of people said it feels a bit like Mean Streets, but with dancing, and I definitely agree with that. It's a very, very gritty film, very dark film, very nihilistic as well. It's quite an unpleasant film as well in a lot of cases. All the characters except for Annette and Stephanie are extremely unlikable, sort of by design. Like John Travolta's character is not a particularly pleasant character, but he's one of the better ones when compared to like his friends and so on. But yeah, very, very grim film. A film I didn't get on with when I first saw it, but upon a recent rewatch I fell in love with it. It's not a perfect film or anything, but it's still a very good film. This film is an 18 for a reason. This is the director's cut version. It's a couple of minutes longer than the theatrical cut. It's got, I think it's got like 2 or 3 short deleted scenes, which I think were included on TV airings, put back into the film. This also includes the theatrical cut, so you can watch that. And I believe this Blu-ray, if you can hunt it down, I believe this Blu-ray has the best transfer of all the other Blu-ray releases of the film, and even the 4K I believe isn't great. One thing this doesn't have is the PG version. Yes, there was a PG version of Saturday Night Fever, where they essentially just were trying to get younger John Travolta fans in to see it, because Grease had been massively successful and that was aimed more at a family audience, and so they basically just took this film and they removed basically everything that made the film work. They just chopped it all out, and so it essentially is just like a disco teeny bopper movie now. I believe the PG version's crap and only really worth it as a kind of morbid curiosity. They didn't release it on DVD or anything. They only ever released it on VHS, and that's it. But I get the feeling, other than just novelty, there's no reason to check out the PG version. Anyway, here's the disc. Next one is an absolute classic, classic British film from the 60s. Billy Liar, starring Tom Courtenay. Very good film, very fun film. I'd highly recommend it. Here's the disc. Keith Waterhouse, How to Live to be 22. Sort of a book sort of coincide with the film. This is from Studio Canal's Vintage Classics collection, which I love the Vintage Classics line. I think this was one of the first releases on that line, and for some reason it doesn't have a slip cover. All my other ones do, but this one doesn't. I don't know if maybe the first pressings had slip covers or not, but whatever. Now I move on to another great film. This is The Final Programme. Really, really fucking weird film, but very, very good film at that. This feels like the ultimate Ken Russell film that wasn't directed by Ken Russell. So you kind of know what you're in for. Brand new restoration apparently on a sticker. This is on their Studio Canal's Cult Classics line, which I didn't even know existed. I thought this was on the Vintage Classics line. Here's the disc. So we have adverts for Studio Canal's newsletter thing, and a couple of art cards. Yeah, I really need to watch this film again at some point. It's really good. Okay, so next up we have a Criterion Blu-ray. Charade, starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. Brilliant film, really, really good fun. Sort of feels like, the way I describe the final programme as being like the ultimate Ken Russell film not directed by Ken Russell. This feels like the ultimate Alfred Hitchcock film not directed by Alfred Hitchcock. So it does feel a bit like it's trying to rape a lot of Hitchcock's work, but that's far from a bad thing, because this film's really, really good fun. Quite interesting facts about this film. This film's actually in the public domain, so nobody has the copyright on it anymore. So, you know, you can find this online for free and so on. The reason why it actually is in the public domain was by accident, because in the opening titles they forgot to add a copyright notice to the credits, and this film came out in 1963, so this was pre Copyright Act 1976, where at the time you had to put in the US, I'm not sure about the UK, but in the US at the time you had to put a copyright notice on your work for it to be legible for a copyright. If you don't do that, then you don't own the copyright to it. And kind of a rare instance, because this was a very big film in its day. It had a fairly decent sized budget behind it. It was produced by Universal, so a massive studio. Stars Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, who were very big names at the time. Yeah, still a very good film, and I'd highly recommend it. Seeking it out. Here's the disc. Special Blu-ray edition. That's just the hype sticker. Then we have a fold-out sort of essay thing, which Criterion always do. I'm not. Have your opinion on these. I'm not a big fan of them. I'd much rather have a booklet, just because these are very, very fiddly, you know, especially to put away. And when you want to read them, I just find a booklet more ideal. But that's just me. Next up we have is a box set. This is the Godfather trilogy, celebrating the 50th anniversary. I admit it took me far too long to watch the Godfather films. They're lauded as some of the best films of all time, but I never actually got around to watching them until a few months ago. The first two Godfathers I can definitely believe the hype on. But yeah, this includes The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, and Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which was this re-edit of The Godfather 3, which Francis Ford Coppola did a few years ago. This does not include the theatrical cut or the director's cut of Godfather 3 only includes the Coda cut, which a lot of people say is like the best version. In fact, it got to the point where people actually started reappraising the Godfather 3. But I'll have my say on that. Yeah, this box has like the J card like stuck on with that horrible gluey stuff on it, and I can't be bothered taking it off. Inside we have just a standard Amaray case. So the first one we have is The Godfather. Absolutely fantastic film. It's one of those films which is 3 hours long, but it doesn't feel 3 hours. Absolutely phenomenal film. Al Pacino gives a fantastic performance, and in general, it is just a great film with a great story and everything. One thing I couldn't really take seriously was Marlon Brando. I think most people know this was sort of that phase of Marlon Brando not giving a crap anymore. Because pretty much whenever somebody like does an impression of Marlon Brando or does like a spoof of Marlon Brando, it's almost always based on his appearance in The Godfather. So I couldn't take it that seriously on that front, but aside from that, it's a really good film. The Godfather 2, which is often lauded as one of the best sequels of all time. Yes, I definitely agree with that statement. It definitely takes what worked with the first Godfather and sort of improved on it. It was sort of partly a prequel, also a sequel, because it sort of shows the progression of Al Pacino's character, Michael Corleone, sort of his ranking through the family. And it's also part of prequel because it shows the flashbacks of Marlon Brando's character in the first Godfather, who in this is played by Robert De Niro, who gives a far, far, far better performance than Marlon Brando ever did. And also, like The Godfather 1, it's a film that's over 3 hours long. This is like 202 minutes or something, and it doesn't feel that length at all. Absolutely phenomenal film. And then, oh dear, The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. As I've said, this apparently is like the best cut of The Godfather 3, to the point where people have actually started reappraising The Godfather 3. If this is the best cut, the theatrical cut must be unwatchable. This film was crap. I could not take this film seriously in the slightest. This plot is just kind of uninteresting, this whole Vatican conspiracy shit. It's the shortest of the Godfathers. In fact, I think this was the shortest cut. But I was bored to tears by it, which is not really a good sign. Sofia Coppola, who went on to become a director, and I believe she's much better as a director. She appears in this and she can't act her way out of a paper bag. There's an incest subplot. I'm not joking. A lot of people criticise Al Pacino's performance in this, because in the first two Godfathers he's a lot more subtle in his performance, whereas in this one it's just kind of over the top Al Pacino, which a lot of people associate with Al Pacino in the 90s. I gave him a pass on the account that I just like Al Pacino as an actor. You know, even when he's not acting, even when he's just being Al Pacino, I just love him. But yeah, it was just, I didn't care for it in the slightest. I mean, it's not unwatchable. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not great. I'd say you can kind of skip it. This one, I believe, was made. It was made years after the rest. The first Godfather came out in 1972. Godfather 2 came out in 1974. This came out in 1990, and I believe Francis Ford Coppola just made it to pay the bills, which is just a bad sign. And also there's like 3 different cuts of this film, whereas the first 2 there's only 1 cut each. So it's basically just like, how many times can you polish a turd, pretty much. And then we just have a bonus disc full of extras. Now I move on to a trilogy. This is Night of the Living Dead, Giorgio Romero film, his breakout film, and one of the benchmark zombie film. Another film which is similar to Charade is also in the public domain, because he forgot to put a copyright notice on it, and also, like Charade, is on the Criterion collection. Phenomenal film, this. Definitely a film which relies the most on atmosphere out of all the Dead films he did. But yeah, great film. Quite ahead of its time in regards to, especially gore. There was quite a lot of gore effects in this, you know. And I mean, it does still look very sort of visceral, because it's even though it's shot in black and white. Yeah, but yeah, very, very good film, this. Yeah, this is the standard Criterion Blu-ray, which is unfortunately out of print, so I had to spend quite a bit on this. I think I spent about 25 quid on it. It is available on 4K as well, but I don't have a 4K player, and it would have cost the same, you know, to get this on 4K, so I figured I'd just hunt down the regular Blu-ray. Inside we have a poster and a very extensive write-up on the film, which is what you get standard with Criterions. But yeah, from what I've seen, this film, this particular Blu-ray has a stunning transfer. Because this film's public domain, there's so many releases of it, and they're very sort of hit or miss in regards to quality of the transfers. I believe the network actually put out a Blu-ray at one point, and their Blu-ray shit. So I'd say, like, even though it's cheaper than this, I'd say avoid it. I'd say look for the Criterion if you can. One thing this doesn't have is the 30th anniversary edition, where John Russo, who I believe was the co-writer, he basically George Lucas have lined this, and he basically just filmed new scenes and slotted them in to the old film, and I believe he rescored it as well, and from what I understand it's absolute shite. It's pretty much unwatchable. Avoid that version, but I think that version is very rare. Just stick to the original if you can. Next up we have its sequel, Dawn of the Dead. A very sort of elusive film when it comes to Blu-ray. In fact, this and the sequel are very elusive to get. The first Night of the Living Dead's public domain, so it's been re-released many times, but this one kind of hasn't, because it's the guy who... It's not even George Romero, it's the guy who composed the music or something. He's a bit of a twat, and he basically is very funny about the rights to this film and who can release it. In fact, I believe kind of Second Sight, who put this out, kind of had to twist his arm, to get it released. But yeah, at least this is still in print, so it's very easy to get. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal film. Easily the best of the Dead trilogy. Definitely kind of takes... It doesn't really have the claustrophobic element of the first Night of the Living Dead, because first Night of the Living Dead, for the most part, takes place in a house, whereas most of this takes place in a shopping mall. But yeah, definitely a really good film. It's great action, great horror, and also surprising amount of comedy to it. The effects are slightly ropey. Obviously, I know it's Tom Savini, and Tom Savini is like a master of special effects. But the issue though is the fact that the blood always looked like red paint, which is kind of a problem with a lot of 70s films. Because the blood always looks way too bright. Blood's not meant to be that bright of red, and so it just never looks right, and this is kind of the poster child of that. But still, really good film. Yeah, this is actually a set of it, a box set of it, so it takes up a lot more space than a regular Blu-ray does. This is the standard edition of this. There was a much bigger box set of this, which had a book and everything with it. The limited edition is, I think, long out of print now. But that would have taken up a lot more space, which is a lot of space for the sake of one film. Yeah, so anyway, here we have just the J card, which is loose. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. We have a digipack. This is a 4-disc set. This contains the theatrical cut, which is the cut I have seen, which is considered to be George Romero's sort of director's cut of it, the one where it sort of balances the tone right. The extended Cannes cut, which I believe, I'm not sure if it was the Cannes cut or the Argento cut. One of them focused more on action, and the other one had a lot more comedy. I think the extended cut has a lot more sort of action and proper horror in it. I've not seen it. Neither have I seen the Argento cut, which was, I believe the Argento cut was released in Italy and a few other places, where I believe you did a new score and stuff, and I believe it focused a lot more on the comedy. Or is the other way around? I'm not sure. I don't have a script, and that's the issue though, because I'm not a die-hard fan of this film. I'm not sure what the difference is between the various cuts. And we also have disc 4, which is special features. This Blu-ray, I believe, is the first time the Cannes cut and the Argento cut were released on Blu-ray. Previously, Arrow released this on Blu-ray, but I believe only the theatrical cut was included on the Arrow Blu-ray. As a Blu-ray, the other cuts were signed in standard definition on DVD. But yeah, great set and a great film as well. Yep, and of course, this one kind of spawned a lot of like unofficial sequels. Dario Argento produced a film afterwards, which was called Zombie, which had its own line of sequels. In the UK, it was called Zombie Flesh Eaters. I've not seen Zombie Flesh Eaters, but I've heard it's really good, so I'll have to check that out at some point. Then the final one of the Dead trilogy is Day of the Dead. This Blu-ray is hideously expensive secondhand. Hopefully Second Sight will get the rights to this and as well and do a new release of it. I think I got this for about 30 quid, which is a bit much considering that at the time when I bought this I hadn't seen the film, so I didn't know if it would be any good or not. But I might as well, yeah. Definitely the weakest of the Dead trilogy. It doesn't really have the same sort of feel to it. It has a lot more of a nasty tone to it when compared to the other two. In fact, a kind of bad sign is, other than Laurie Cadell's character and a few of the other characters, I wanted to see the zombies win, which is kind of not really a good sign for a Dead movie. And I mean, I didn't feel that way about Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead. But I mean, it's still a decent film. Joe Palacio plays a character called Captain Rhodes, who's like cartoonishly evil. Basically like this insane military tycoon type. His performance is just over the top, but really, really entertaining. And also, surprisingly, like the gore effects look a lot more convincing. The blood doesn't really look like paint. And also, the last 20 minutes of the film were amazing. In fact, I think really only watch this for the last 20 minutes. But it's still a decent film. But it's not the best. It's definitely the weakest of the trilogy. And this was released by Arrow. This was a very early Arrow. This is from it says 2012 on the back, but I'm pretty sure this is a reprint. The original Blu-ray was one of those window box editions, and it came out in 2010, I think. But this is just the standard edition. And also, okay, I know it was 2012, but come on, Arrow, I thought you knew better. Running time, 259 minutes. They've added up both the film and the extras. Some boutique Blu-rays do this, and I've got no idea why. I mean, that kind of defeats... You know, if you're going to pull that crap, you might as well just not include runtime at all. Because, I mean, that's pretty much useless. Because, spoiler alert, Day of the Dead is not that long. Day of the Dead's like 100 minutes or something like that. But yep, inside here we have the Blu-ray, second disc, which is the DVD, which is basically the same content as the Blu-ray, and the DVD of extras. So we have the reverse artwork. This is the artwork it came with. And inside we also have a little postcard. This one advertises primarily Deep Red, but also a lot of other Arrow titles which are out at the time. Forbidden Zone, that's really good, as is Frankenhooker. What else have I seen? Silent Night, Deadly Night's pretty good as well. So we have a booklet. So what you'd expect from Arrow. Then finally we have a box set. This is the Werner Herzog collection. Contains 18 films. I've been meaning to check out the work of Werner Herzog for some time. But prior to getting this set, the only film from him I'd seen was Aguirre, Wrath of God, which is a fantastic film, by the way. But yeah, I did spend a few months sort of going through this box set. Werner Herzog is a very interesting director, very interesting guy, and especially seeing him in interviews. He's very much an eccentric. There was quite infamously that one time when he was doing an interview in Mark Kermode and he got shot with a BB gun, and apparently it turned out it was staged. He hired somebody to shoot him because he feared like no one was talking about his films anymore, and so he just did that to draw attention, which is like, considering from what I know what Herzog's like, that is so Herzog. But yeah, this contains 18 films, but I think only about 9 of these are feature length. Most of these are under an hour each. This doesn't have all his films. It doesn't have Grizzly Man or Bad Lieutenant, Port au Cou, New Orleans, but it has most of his essential ones. Films included in here are The Unprecedented Adventure of the Portraits Dutch Crows, which is a short, Last Words, Precautions Against Fanatics, which is really fun, a little documentary sort of about racehorses. Handicap Future, which is another really good documentary. Fata Morgana, Land of Science and Darkness, another great documentary, sort of from that era of that and Handicap Future, sort of the, sort of how people with disabilities were treated in Germany in the late 60s, early 70s. Geary, Wrath of God, which is of course fantastic. The Enigma of Caspar Hauser, which is really good as well, based on a true story about this guy who was basically just spent the first 17 years of his life basically just locked in like a dungeon with a toy horse to play with, and he never had any interactions and he could only form a few words, and it sort of is about him sort of venturing into the real world and about him sort of questioning religion and stuff like that. It's a really good film. Great Ecstasy of Rutger Steiner, Heart of Glass, How Much Wood Will Chuck Chuck, very interesting documentary about auctioneers. Interestingly enough, I actually watched that in English. All these I watched in German with the English subtitles. That's the only one I watched in English because even though it was produced, for German television, I think, and so on, basically he was actually interviewing Americans. Although I think the lead guy, the main interview subject was Canadian, and so it was in English. But when Herzog would talk over it in German and then you have the same subtitles in English, it was very, very distracting. So eventually, just after a few minutes, I just switched over to the English version, which was a far more easier watch. Strozek, which is a really good film as well. Sort of a film which was filmed partly in Germany and partly in America. Very interesting film about sort of the downfall of the American dream, told from a German filmmaker's perspective, because it's mostly American films which are critical of the American dream. Nosferatu the Vampire, very good remake of Nosferatu, starring Klaus Kinski as Dracula, which I couldn't really take it that seriously because of just how goofy the makeup looked. Warczek, I think that's how you pronounce it. Huey's Sermon, which is definitely the weakest film on the set. Very much, it's essentially just a recording of a sermon. So it's kind of what you'd expect. I mean, I kind of get where it's coming from, about criticising religion, because Herzog is very critical of religion in a lot of his films, which I'm all for, by the way. But it's just not that compelling. God's Angry Man, the FCC monkey band bit just has to be seen to be believed. Fitzcarraldo, which is definitely the best film on the set, fantastic film. Definitely sort of work. It feels very similar to Aguirre or Afro-God, but kind of takes what worked in that film and improved on it greatly. And Cobra Verde is the last film on the set, which is not one of my favourites. It's an alright film, but it is essentially just trying to be like Fitzcarraldo or Aguirre, but not anywhere near as good, and it wasn't really as compelling as it should have been. But it was all right. And this film also had this box set also has Burn of Dreams, which was the documentary about the making of Fitzcarraldo, which is definitely worth a watch. As his Herzog eats his shoe. Here we have the booklet. sort of what do you expect from BFI. And here's the inner casing. There's 8 discs, so most of these films share discs, but it doesn't seem to affect the picture quality. The picture quality on a lot of these films is absolutely stunning. I had to keep reminding myself this was a Blu-ray from 2014, so this is about 12 years old. They have released Aguirre and Nosferatu as 4Ks, but avoid those because apparently the BFI used AI upscaling on them, which I honestly thought the BFI knew better than to pull that crap, but I guess not. And their excuse was, oh, it was either that or nothing. What the fuck does that mean? Because these Blu-rays came out before AI upscaling was a thing, and they look absolutely stunning. You know, these Blu-rays are 12 years old, but they look great. Yeah, but definitely avoid getting those films on 4K. Just get this box set if you want. For some reason, it's cheaper to get the Blu-ray version of this set than the DVD. I don't know why, but that's a thing. But anyway, that's it for the moment. So long for now.